The moment I got the promotion, I thought I had finally won. Years of hard work had paid off, and I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. But something felt off. My wife's reaction was a little too enthusiastic. My boss had a strange glint in his eye when he shook my hand. And then there were the whispers at work, the jokes I didn't quite understand. Looking back, the signs were there. I just wasn't ready to see them yet. For 6 years, I had poured everything into my job at Westbridge Consulting. Late nights, weekends in the office, taking on projects no one else wanted, whatever it took to get ahead. And finally, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. That morning, Daniel Carter, my boss and the firm's senior partner, called me into his office. He was the kind of man people either admired or feared, a ruthless businessman with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. "You've done good work, Ethan," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Starting Monday, you're the new senior analyst." I blinked. "Wait, really?" Carter smirked. "You earned it." I walked out of his office in a daze. This was it. More responsibility, a bigger paycheck, a step closer to the executive track. I could already picture the look on my wife's face when I told her. When I got home that evening, Olivia's reaction was unexpected. She wasn't just happy, she was thrilled. "Oh my God, babe. I knew it," she practically squealed, throwing her arms around me. Her excitement was almost unsettling. "Knew it?" I asked, pulling back to look at her. She hesitated for a second, then laughed. "I just had a feeling. You've been working so hard. It was bound to happen." At the time, I brushed it off. She was just proud of me, right? But then things started to get weird. Over the next few weeks, Olivia began acting differently. She suddenly cared more about how she looked. New clothes, fresh highlights in her hair, expensive perfume she'd never worn before. I figured she just wanted to match our new lifestyle. But then there was her phone. It never used to be a big deal, but now, it was always locked, always face down. Then, there were the comments at work. One afternoon, I was grabbing coffee when a coworker, James, smirked at me. "Guess Carter really took a liking to you, huh?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Nothing, man. Let's just say people were surprised." I laughed it off, but something about his tone made my stomach twist. And then came the company party. I was mid-conversation when I spotted Olivia across the room with Carter. They were at the bar, standing close, laughing. She touched his arm lightly, and he leaned in just a little too much. And the way he looked at her, I didn't like it. That was the moment the first real doubt hit me. Had I really earned this promotion? Or was something else going on behind my back? For the first few weeks after my promotion, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. But once the thought was in my head, I couldn't shake it. Olivia had always been outgoing, but lately she seemed too busy. She was going out more, always saying she was meeting up with her friends. At first, I didn't think much of it, but I started to notice a shift. Before, she would invite me along sometimes. Now, it was always just the girls. And when she came home late at night, she looked almost giddy. Then there was her phone. Olivia had never been the type to guard her phone. We trusted each other completely, never feeling the need to snoop. But suddenly, her phone was always with her. Always face down, always locked. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd quickly swipe away, acting like she hadn't been doing anything at all. I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous, that it was all in my head. Then came the office whispers. One morning, I was pouring myself a cup of coffee in the break room when Ryan, one of my coworkers, leaned against the counter next to me. "So," he said casually, "Carter must really like you." I smiled. "Well, I'd hope so. He did just promote me." Ryan gave a half smirk. "It must have been your work ethic." The way he said it, slow, deliberate, made me pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, keeping my tone light. He shrugged. "Nothing, man. Just saying, not everyone moves up that fast." I let out a short laugh, but the unease stuck with me. And Ryan wasn't the only one. Later that day, as I walked past two coworkers in the hallway, I heard one of them mutter, "Guess we all know why he got promoted." They didn't realize I had heard them, but I did. That night at dinner, I casually brought it up to Olivia. "Seems like some people at work were surprised by my promotion," I said, watching her reaction. She barely looked up from her plate. "Why wouldn't they be? You've worked hard for this." "Yeah, but I think some people think there's more to it." For just a second, she hesitated. A split-second freeze before she picked up her glass of wine and took a sip. Then she smiled. Office gossip is the worst. Ignore them. She said it so smoothly, so naturally, that I almost believed her. Over the next week, my unease grew. It wasn't just her behavior or the comments at work. It was everything. Carter seemed overly friendly now, like we had some unspoken understanding. Olivia, meanwhile, suddenly seemed way too interested in my job, asking about my meetings, my projects, my interactions with Carter. Then, one evening, as she was getting ready to go out again, I leaned against the doorway. "Where are you headed tonight?" She smiled at me in the mirror as she put on her earrings. "Dinner with Hannah and Rachel. You've been seeing them a lot lately." She laughed. "What? You want me to stay home and be boring?" "No, of course not." I forced a smile. "Just feels like you're always out." She walked over and kissed me. "I'll make it up to you this weekend, okay?" I nodded, but something in my gut told me this wasn't right. As I watched her leave, a thought hit me. What if I just checked? Not in a crazy, paranoid way. Just a quick confirmation that she was actually with Hannah and Rachel. 20 minutes later, I picked up my phone and sent Hannah a text. "Hey, how's dinner? Tell Olivia not to drink too much." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, a full minute later, "Hannah, Olivia's not here. Thought she was home with you?" My blood turned to ice. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe Hannah had the wrong night. But deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at my phone, reading Laura's message over and over. "Olivia's not here. Thought she was with you." I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Laura got the dates mixed up. Maybe Olivia had changed plans at the last minute and forgot to tell me. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. If she wasn't with Laura and Sophie, where the hell was she? And why would she lie? The next morning, I tried to act normal. Olivia was in an unusually good mood, humming to herself as she made coffee. "How was dinner?" I asked casually, keeping my eyes on her. She barely looked up. "Oh, it was great. We ate way too much." I nodded. "Yeah?" Laura said the service was slow. For a fraction of a second, she hesitated. It was so quick that I almost missed it. Then she laughed. "Oh my God, we were starving by the time the food came." It was a perfect answer, except Laura hadn't said anything about the service. I forced a smile, but inside, my stomach twisted into knots. For the next few days, I started paying more attention. Olivia was on her phone constantly, but the moment I walked into the room, she'd put it down. She was taking more calls in private, always with some excuse. "It's just my mom. Work again." One night, I walked up behind her while she was texting. She noticed immediately, locked her phone, and turned with a nervous smile. "Jesus, Ethan, you scared me. You gotta stop sneaking up on me." I apologized, but my suspicions only grew stronger. At work, the strange looks hadn't stopped. If anything, they had gotten worse. One afternoon, I was in the break room when Ryan leaned against the counter next to me. "So," he said, smirking, "how's it feel?" I frowned. "How's what feel?" "You know, being in Carter's good graces." I forced a laugh. "I'm just doing my job." Ryan took a sip of his coffee. "Sure. Just be careful, man. Carter doesn't do favors for free." I tensed. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged. "Nothing. Just saying, keep your eyes open." I wanted to press him for more, but before I could, another coworker walked in, and Ryan changed the subject. I spent the rest of the day replaying his words in my head. Carter doesn't do favors for free. What the hell was that supposed to mean? That night, Olivia got dressed up again. "Going out?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Yeah, just drinks with Sophie," she said, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait up, okay?" I nodded, watching as she walked out the door. As soon as I heard her car pull away, I grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to sit around wondering anymore. Tonight, I was going to follow her. I had never done anything like this before. Sitting in my car, headlights off, hands gripping the wheel, I felt like some kind of amateur detective. My heart pounded as I watched Olivia's taillights disappear down the street. I hesitated for a moment before pulling out behind her, keeping my distance. Every part of me screamed that this was crazy, that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew I wasn't making this up. She wasn't heading towards Sophie's neighborhood. In fact, she wasn't going anywhere near the usual spots. Instead, she took a series of turns that led further and further away from the city center. The longer I followed her, the harder it became to breathe. 15 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of the Lenox Hotel, a high-end place on the other side of town. My stomach twisted. I pulled into a spot at a safe distance and watched as she stepped out of her car. She smoothed down her dress, checked her reflection in the side mirror, then pulled out her phone. A second later, she smiled. Not just any smile. A real one. The kind I hadn't seen in months. Then, without hesitation, she walked through the hotel entrance and disappeared inside. For a moment, I sat there in stunned silence. A part of me still wanted to believe there was some logical explanation. That maybe she was here for a work event or meeting a friend or something. Anything other than what I feared. Then, 10 minutes later, another car pulled up, a sleek black BMW. And stepping out of it, adjusting his tie like he owned the place, was Daniel Carter. My boss. The man who had just promoted me. The man who had been way too friendly with my wife. I clenched my jaw, so hard it ached. My whole body went numb, yet my heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I had feared this. I had suspected this. But seeing it with my own eyes, that was different. That was real. Carter checked his watch, glanced at his phone, then walked into the hotel like this was routine. Like he belonged here. A surge of rage shot through me. My fists tightened. My breathing came in short bursts. Every instinct screamed at me to storm in there, to grab him, to demand answers. But I didn't, because I knew that wouldn't change anything. I forced myself to think, if I confronted them now, what would happen? They'd deny it, twist the story, make me look like a jealous, unstable husband. No, I needed proof. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone. I zoomed in on the hotel entrance and snapped a picture just as the doors swung shut behind Carter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I sat there for a while, watching the hotel, my mind racing. How long would they be in there? An hour? The whole night? I didn't wait to find out. With my stomach in knots and my hands gripping the wheel, so tight my knuckles turned white, I started the car and drove away. This wasn't over. Not even close. The next day at work, I barely heard a word anyone said. Emails, meetings, conversations, it all blurred together. My mind was trapped in a loop, replaying the same images over and over again. Olivia walking into that hotel, the way she smiled at her phone, and then Carter, stepping out of his car like this was just another night for him. By the time I got home, my decision was made. I needed proof. I wasn't going to confront her with just suspicions. She'd deny everything, twist the truth, make me look paranoid. No, I needed something concrete, something she wouldn't be able to explain away. I started with her bank statements. We had a joint account for shared expenses, but Olivia also had a personal account. I had never felt the need to check it before. Sitting at my desk, I logged into our bank's website. My heart pounded as I typed in the login details, hands slightly shaking as I clicked through to her recent transactions. And then I saw them. Expensive restaurants I had never heard of, a charge for the Lenox Hotel, the very place I had seen her enter last night. High-end boutiques. She hadn't mentioned any of this. I took screenshots, saving them to a hidden folder on my laptop. It wasn't irrefutable proof, but it was something. Then, I remembered the security camera. Months ago, we had installed a doorbell camera after someone stole a package from our porch. It recorded motion-activated clips and stored them online for a few weeks. I had barely thought about it since. I opened the app, scrolling through the past few days. And there she was. Multiple times this week, Olivia had left the house in the middle of the day, dressed nicely, moving quickly. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, something else appeared on the footage. A black BMW pulling into our driveway. Carter. My pulse pounded as I watched him sit there, waiting. A moment later, Olivia stepped outside, glanced around like she was checking for neighbors, and got into the passenger seat. They drove off together. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my body tense with barely contained rage. But I forced myself to stay calm. If I lost control now, I'd never get the full picture. That night, I lay in bed beside Olivia, pretending everything was normal. She scrolled through her phone, her face relaxed, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. Just past midnight, her phone lit up on the nightstand. A text. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse before the screen went dark again. Miss you. No name. Just an unsaved number. A rush of heat burned through my chest. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breathing. This was it. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. She was cheating on me. And soon, she was going to find out exactly what that meant. I wasn't going to be the idiot who sat back and let this happen. Olivia and Carter thought they had everything under control. That I was blind. That I would never put the pieces together. That they could laugh at me while sneaking around like a pair of reckless teenagers. They were wrong. The next day, I focused on gathering everything. I compiled the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the security footage of Carter pulling up to our house and Olivia getting into his car. I backed up every file on multiple devices, uploaded copies to cloud storage, and even printed hard copies. If anything happened, if they tried to erase the truth, it wouldn't matter. But I needed more than just evidence. I needed a plan. At work, I started listening more closely. The things people said in hushed tones when they thought no one was paying attention. The way Carter's name came up in whispers, always attached to phrases like shady deals or not the first time. And that was when I realized something crucial. This wasn't the first time he had done this. Apparently, Carter had a habit. Affairs with employees, backroom deals, bending the rules just enough to keep his position safe. He was powerful, but not invincible. And if I played my cards right, I could take everything from him. I started planting seeds. During a casual lunch conversation, I asked a coworker if they had ever noticed how Carter played favorites. A harmless question, one that didn't point fingers, but let the idea linger. People love gossip. If I nudged things in the right direction, the office would take care of the rest. But I still needed the final piece of proof. That night, while Olivia was in the shower, I carefully picked up her phone from the nightstand. I had memorized her passcode weeks ago, waiting for the right moment. I unlocked her phone. A message thread with an unsaved number immediately caught my attention. Carter. The messages were exactly what I expected. Flirty, intimate, shameless. He missed her. He couldn't stop thinking about her. He was counting down the days until they could be together again. I clenched my jaw and kept scrolling. Then I saw the confirmation. A message about the upcoming work trip. Carter was scheduled to attend a corporate retreat next weekend, out of town. And Olivia? She was planning to meet him there. They had even booked a hotel room together. I nearly crushed the phone in my grip. I forced myself to stay calm, carefully placing it back on the nightstand just as the shower turned off. I lay back down, closing my eyes as Olivia walked into the room, drying her hair. Tired? She asked softly, climbing into bed next to me. Yeah, I mumbled. Long day. She leaned over, pressing a kiss to my cheek. Get some rest, okay? I nodded, pretending to drift off. But there was no way in hell I was sleeping tonight. They thought they were in control. They had no idea what was coming. I had everything I needed. The proof. The plan. The perfect timing. Now it was time to end this. For days, I had carefully mapped out every step. I knew Olivia and Carter were planning to meet at the conference that weekend. I knew their hotel, their room number, even their dinner reservation. They thought they were being discreet, but they had no idea I was already ahead of them. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. The first step was catching them in the act. I had considered going myself, barging into the hotel room and watching the horror on their faces as they realized their secret was out. But that was too emotional, too messy. Instead, I hired a private investigator, someone who knew exactly how to get the kind of proof I needed: photos, videos, undeniable evidence. The second step? Taking Carter down for good. Over the last few days, I had dug into every shady deal, every questionable promotion, every rumor about him. And it turned out Carter had made a lot of powerful enemies in the company. So, I sent an anonymous email to the board of directors. Attached were files linking Carter to financial misconduct, favoritism, and, most importantly, his repeated affairs with employees' wives. This wasn't just office gossip anymore. This was a corporate scandal waiting to explode. But I wasn't done yet. I also contacted a few key people in the company. Those who had been slighted by Carter, passed over for promotions, or forced to work under his rule. I gave them a simple tip. Check his records, look into the promotions he's handed out, ask why certain deals never went through the proper channels. I didn't need to push too hard. Once the suspicion was there, they would tear him apart themselves. The final step? Olivia. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or give her the satisfaction of trying to lie her way out. I was going to let the truth destroy her. I compiled everything: screenshots, security footage, hotel records, texts. Then I scheduled emails. One to her family, one to her closest friends, one to people she truly cared about, all set to send at the perfect moment. But I wanted to see it happen. Friday evening, I sat in my car across from the hotel. At exactly 7:43 p.m., Carter's black BMW pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, straightened his jacket, checked his phone, and walked inside like he owned the place. 5 minutes later, Olivia arrived. She stepped out of her car, adjusting her dress, eyes shining with excitement. She thought she was meeting her lover. She had no idea she was walking straight into her downfall. I let her get inside, let her feel safe. Then I texted the investigator. Do it. Within minutes, he was inside, capturing everything. Photos, video, audio, proof so damning that neither of them would ever be able to talk their way out of it. Then, with one deep breath, I hit send on my emails. At that moment, Olivia's phone, tucked away in her purse inside the hotel, began lighting up with notifications. Messages from her friends, her family, people asking what the hell was going on. Carter's career was no longer safe. The board members were about to receive the email that would bury him. And me? I watched from a distance, knowing that by the time they realized what had happened, it would already be too late. They thought they were in control. They had no idea the trap had already closed. I sat in my car across from the hotel, watching and waiting. Inside, Olivia and Carter were probably sipping wine, laughing, thinking they had pulled it off again. Another perfect night, another secret meeting. They had no idea their world was about to come crashing down. And then, right on cue, it started. Olivia's phone, tucked inside her bag, began to vibrate. Then again, and again. Within seconds, the screen lit up with an endless stream of notifications. Family, friends, colleagues, message after message. What is this? Olivia, tell me this isn't true. How could you do this? I imagine her reaching for her phone, still smiling, until she saw the messages. Until she realized that her secret was no longer a secret. At the same time, across the table, Carter's phone went off. A call from the company. Someone from the board had already seen the email. He was done. I watched through the hotel window as he pushed back from the table, answering the call with an irritated look. His frustration quickly turned to confusion, then panic. I could picture what was happening. Someone tearing into him, demanding an explanation. The weight of his downfall settling in as he tried, and failed, to come up with a way out. Olivia, still oblivious to his crisis, kept scrolling through her phone, her face growing paler by the second. Her breathing quickened. Her hands trembled, and then it hit her. She grabbed her phone and called me. I watched as her name flashed on my screen. I didn't answer. She called again, and again. I let it ring. Back inside, Carter stormed back to the table, face flushed with anger. He said something to Olivia. Harsh, accusatory. Maybe he was blaming her. Maybe he was trying to figure out who had set him up. And then, just as she was about to respond, the final blow landed. Photos, videos, proof. The investigator had done his job well. Every angle covered, every lie exposed. There was nothing left to deny. Carter shot up from his seat, knocking over his drink. Other guests turned to look, but he didn't care. His career, his reputation, everything he had built was collapsing in real time. Olivia sat frozen, staring at her phone, eyes wide, her world crashing down around her. And in that moment, she finally understood. She hadn't just lost her reputation. She hadn't just lost her lover. She had lost me. One last message popped up on my phone. A text from her. Please, talk to me. Let me explain. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I locked my phone and drove away. By morning, the fallout had already begun. At work, the whispers turned into open conversations. Carter, once seen as untouchable, was now the center of company-wide speculation. Emails were exchanged. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. By noon, the situation had escalated. People weren't just gossiping anymore. They were discussing details. The anonymous email I had sent had done its job. A few board members had already suspected Carter of unethical behavior, but without proof, they couldn't act. Now, they had everything they needed. The first blow landed when he was pulled into a confidential discussion with senior leadership. The second came when the press got involved. By midweek, articles started appearing online. Nothing too explicit, yet. Industry insiders whispered about a high-ranking executive facing allegations of misconduct. No names at first, just speculation. But speculation never stays quiet for long. By Friday, the truth was out. Carter resigned under personal circumstances, but everyone knew what that meant. His career was over. The powerful, respected businessman was now just another disgraced executive. His network distanced themselves. Clients withdrew contracts. If he had a wife, she was gone. If he had allies, they had abandoned him. Some people said he tried to fight it, that he demanded a chance to clear things up, that he called in favors trying to spin the story. But the proof was undeniable. The board didn't want the scandal to spread further. They wanted him gone, and I didn't feel a thing. As for Olivia, she came home that morning, but it wasn't her home anymore. Her belongings were neatly packed in suitcases, placed by the door. The locks had been changed. She stood outside for a long moment, staring at the door, before finally knocking. I opened it, looked at her. She looked exhausted. Her hair was messy, her face pale, her eyes red, either from lack of sleep or from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. Her hands trembled slightly. "Please, just let me explain." I stepped aside, letting her see the packed bags, letting her understand. She stepped inside, looking around slowly. Her eyes moved from the suitcases to the now half-empty closet. "When?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Last night." She turned to me, searching for something in my expression. "You're not even going to listen?" "No." She flinched at the coldness in my voice. Silence settled between us. Then she let out a small, bitter laugh. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. She had nothing left. Her family knew. Her friends knew. At work, her colleagues looked at her differently. Some whispered, some avoided her entirely. The life she had built, the security she had taken for granted, was gone. She sat down on the couch, rubbing her temples. She looked like she was trying to hold herself together, but I could see it, the weight of her own destruction settling in. "Do you hate me?" she asked after a long silence. I thought about it. Hate required energy, effort, passion. I shook my head. No. And that, more than anything, seemed to break her. I handed her the divorce papers. She stared at them for a moment, then looked up at me. "So that's it? That's it?" She opened her mouth as if to say something else, but stopped herself. Maybe she wanted to beg. Maybe she wanted to apologize again. But she knew it wouldn't change anything. She nodded, slow and deliberate. Then, without another word, she picked up her bags and walked out. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't feel relief, or happiness, or regret. I just closed the door and moved on. It was over. Carter was gone. After his resignation, he disappeared from the industry. Some said he left the city. Others claimed he was trying to salvage what little reputation he had left. A few rumors even suggested he was considering legal action, but that didn't matter. His name no longer carried weight. No power. No influence. Just another disgraced executive. By the end of the month, his name had already started fading from conversations. The company moved on. His former colleagues pretended he had never existed. Competitors who once envied him barely acknowledged his downfall. His legacy was nothing more than a cautionary tale. As for Olivia, she tried to rebuild. I wasn't looking for updates, but when someone's life falls apart as publicly as hers did, news has a way of reaching you. Her friends, the ones who used to post photos of girls' nights out, the ones who always left comments about how lucky she was, stopped including her. Some cut her off completely. Others just slowly pulled away. Her family, embarrassed and exhausted, had stopped defending her. They had nothing left to say. At work, things were even worse. She wasn't fired, but she might as well have been. People knew. No one said anything to her face, but they didn't have to. It was in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room, the way people exchanged glances behind her back. She was tolerated, but she no longer belonged. Then, one night, I got a message from her. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, I just want you to know I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I focused on my own life. I finalized the divorce, moved out of the apartment, found a new place, mine, and mine alone. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in doubt. I wasn't questioning everything. I wasn't sharing a home with someone who could smile at me in the morning and betray me by nightfall. For the first time in years, I was free. Then, one afternoon, I got an unexpected call. A job offer. A position in another city. Better pay, better work environment. A chance to leave behind every reminder of the past. I didn't hesitate. 2 weeks later, I packed my bags, signed the final paperwork, and walked away from the life that had nearly broken me. But before I left, I took one last walk through the city. Not because I was nostalgic. I just wanted to see it one more time, to let it go completely. I passed by places that had once meant something. The bar where Olivia and I had celebrated my first promotion. The cafe where we used to sit on lazy Sunday mornings. The apartment building where we built a life I thought would last forever. None of it hurt anymore. It was just a place I used to know. The past no longer had a hold on me. The next morning, I loaded the last of my bags into my car. As I stood outside my new apartment one final time, I turned back, not with sadness, not with regret, but with a quiet certainty. I had won. I had survived, and I was finally free. Then, without hesitation, I got in my car and never looked back.